My name is Barry Stewart and we're at the nursery of Celtic Wildflowers. Our mission statement is to support the nature conservation of the flora of British Isles and all the other species that are associated with that. And today I'm going to show you around some of the species that we have of interest and some of the projects that we've been involved with. The nursery is at the RSPCA Centre at Llysninny, which is just on the northern outskirts of Swansea, and we rent an acre of land from them where we've developed the nursery. We've been here for just less than 3 years, and originally all we had was this horse shed over here, which is where we tend to store our implements, but we've actually set up 3 polytunnels now, and we've got standing out beds for a whole range of native wildflowers. We grow approximately 300 species, all of local provenance, and all for a whole range of different projects, from peatland restoration to wildflower meadows and trees and shrubs as well. So the reason we actually set up the nursery was because of a particularly rare butterfly called the marsh fritillary, which is it's a threatened European protected species, and local authorities wanted to do some habitat mitigation for the butterfly, which required planting a whole lot of a plant called devil's bit scabious, which is this plant here. This is the food plant upon which the caterpillars feed, and essentially nobody was growing plants in sufficient quantity within Wales, and companies were having to buy them in from outside. And I was asked, in my capacity as an ecological consultant, would I be prepared to grow some myself, because there was no one available to actually grow these plants in sufficient numbers. And this is how the business started, by growing about 5,000 devil's bit scabious for the marsh fritillary butterfly. So we planted 5,000 of these plants up at a site near Hirwaun, which is where the marsh fritillary occurs, but on land which isn't currently suitable for the marsh fritillary butterfly. So the purpose was to get this plant established so that in future years the butterfly will naturally colonize it. And we planted it in the middle of winter in pretty horrific conditions. And then it was about 9 months later when we went back to inspect to see how they'd survived. And there was myself, the local planning ecologist, a representative from National Resources Wales, and the people from the business company who funded it. And we were absolutely gobsmacked by the survival of the plants. And not only did they survive, but they're actually in full flower and obviously doing the purpose for which we planted them, which was to obviously increase the ecological value of the site. So a major success with our first project. Once people found out that we'd grown devil's bit scabious for the marsh fritillary, people asked, can we grow other species for other species which are in decline? One of which is the small blue butterfly, which feeds on this plant here. So the caterpillars feed on kidney vetch, and we were asked if we could grow this. So we grew a whole lot of kidney vetch, and we had another successful project, and people just started saying, well, can you grow things for other species? And this is how the business really started to look like a proposition. And once we started growing other species, within a space of 1.5 years, we had 250 species underway. But it was the enthusiasm of the people who were, it was like a revelation. Oh my goodness, people are growing native plants from Wales. And people just really got on board with it. And it just gave us the impetus then to go further. After growing a year of pollinator species, there's a lot of interest in trees and shrubs. So we decided to grow trees and shrubs, and we do have a pretty good range. Pretty much all of the native species you find in Wales we do grow. So we've sourced these from the best possible places to ensure good Welsh provenance. And there's a range of different species visible here. One of our favourites is this thing, the alder buckthorn, which is the food plant of the brimstone butterfly. And in addition to that, it actually supports an incredible amount of bees. The flowers are absolutely tiny. You can hardly see them, to be honest, in the foliage. But the bees that come to mature plants is quite phenomenal. Dogwood is another species. So this came from cuttings from Kenfig National Nature Reserve, so real good provenance. And behind me here we've got some black poplars, which is nationally a very rare tree. And in fact, there's only 2 plants in the whole of West Glamorgan. So we've got cuttings from Glamorgan trees and from Carmarthenshire trees. Beech is another species which we grow. So these are grown from seeds collected from the beech woods north of Cardiff, which are the only true native beech woods in Wales. So this is, again, very good provenance. And all of our trees are container grown, so they can be planted at any time of year. And obviously the benefits with planting trees and shrubs is that they do support a really big range of associated invertebrates, and obviously all the predators that feed upon them, from bats to birds. So anyway, a good selection of tree species. We essentially invested our own capital into the project, but we were given a lot of support from different organisations who were really enthused by what we were aiming to achieve. So our first support came from the Gower Society, who gave us a grant, and then we had additional support from the National Trust, who actually gave us a field to grow some plants in down at Rhossili. We had support from the Wildlife Trust, who gave us permission to collect seed from their land. Then we also had a letter of authorisation from the Gower Commoners solicitor to authorise us to collect seed from their sites as well. And the support has really come about because people are totally on board with what we're trying to achieve and do positive things for nature conservation. So much so that a company called BSG, Baker Shepherd and Gillespie, they actually bought us this polytunnel because they wanted to help us improve the amount of plants that we could produce for nature conservation projects. And this plant I'm holding here is a plant we were given authorisation by the National Trust to collect cuttings of. It's one of Wales's rarest plants. It's the wild juniper, which grows on the cliffs of Gower, and the population is severely threatened by cliff fires. So we've now got a good number of these in propagation, which will be eventually put back on the cliffs to support not just the plant, but the host of invertebrates that are dependent on it. So there are moths which actually don't feed on anything but native juniper, and it's vital that we sort of conserve these species and put them back where they should be.
So when we build these, it's quite a few trees we have to move.
No, it's a tree failure here. It's like a tank.
So we're a husband and wife team who set up the business back in 2019, but after a year it was quite clear that we weren't able to perform all of the duties ourselves. So we recruited family and friends to help us out, many of which are now really loyal employees and volunteers, like Jeff, for example, Sand.
I just feel that we literally couldn't function without the team that we've got. Jeff is my stepdad, and he's just touching 80 now, and he is literally a one-man machine. The amount of work that he's done for this nursery and this business is just phenomenal, and we just owe him so much. And for the last couple of years, we've had Nancy and Angela, and literally the dedication that they've got to our nursery and to us and to everything is literally, we couldn't function without them. So I think we're really blessed, really.
We are, yeah. They're such unbelievably hard workers, yeah. And everyone really enjoys working here. And people do say that it's just such a lovely environment to work in, and to know that the work you're doing is adding towards conservation just makes you more driven. Everybody really wants to
make a difference.
Yeah, make a difference for the environment. So one of the plants that we supply in good quantities to the Brecon Beacons National Park and others is sphagnum moss. Now this is a really important plant for supporting the conservation of our peatlands in the uplands. A lot of our uplands have been degraded, and the authorities now realise how important peatlands are for not just carbon capture, because sphagnum moss essentially forms peat, which locks carbon into the ground permanently. But in addition to that, it actually performs a really important role for preventing runoff of water into our valleys. So if you've got a good healthy peat bog on top of a mountain, when it rains hard, the peat will actually act like a sponge, hold onto the water and prevent flooding events. So the more of our peatlands we restore to the condition they were formerly in, the better it will be environmentally, in terms of it'll reduce carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, but it will also obviously prevent flooding events as well. So it's a really important plant, and it's incredibly tactile. So we also supply trays like this to schools for educational purposes, because obviously youngsters need to understand the importance of sphagnum moss if they're to be part of our future in projects in the future. So as I say, sphagnum moss is an amazing plant, and there's lots, everyone should learn about it.
You don't see on these very much, it's like black fly on it. We started our business two and a half years ago, simply because we care so passionately about the environment, and we want to make a difference. and we believe we can make a difference. I know Barry has a lot of the expertise in order to lead us in the right direction, and we've got a good team on board. As well as that, we feel we're a very ethically minded business. All our compost has always ever been peat-free compost. The pots we used are made from recycled plastic, and they can be recycled at the end of it. Our plug trays have a 20-year lifespan, so we never supply our plugs in plastic. As much as we can, we're trying to make a difference, and it doesn't need to be difficult. We try and make it as easy as possible for people to make a difference. And I know you've got some examples.
Yeah, so what we try and do, we get consulted a lot. So for example, at Penclouth, the local councillor came to us and said, I've got a really barren gravel strip. What can we do with it? And we just said it's a really simple solution. Just add a small amount of sand, a small amount of compost, and we then planted it with 60 native species which people can see when they go on the Gower for walks. So we said this will showcase the flora of Gower, so when people stop in Penclouth car park, people can basically be educated about the wildlife value on Gower. But the key thing was it's just incredibly easy to do, and anybody can do a project on a big scale or a small scale. And we offer advice. There's plenty of information on the website about the sorts of projects we're involved with, just helping people deliver those goals and to try and
make a difference.
Make a difference, yeah. Mm-hmm.